3, and so I'll call this meeting to order. Good morning, mayors, committee members, staff, and presenters to the Public Transport Committee meeting. And a special welcome to members of the public who are watching live or via recording on YouTube. We are having some issues with the YouTube at the moment to get it live streaming, and staff are working on that, but it will be recorded. Can I make a special welcome to Natalie Van Rosen from Waka Kotari NZTA. I haven't seen if you're here. Are you here? Yes. You are here, so thank you for joining this committee. There'll be a change in the agenda in that the presentation will be provided by Alistair Talbot regarding the Tauriko City's mode shift initiatives after the chairman's report. Can I remind you all that if you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function and remember to lower the hand once you've finished. Before I call for apologies, can I just say that I'm really pleased to chair this meeting this morning, because this is a very important committee. It is a very big budget item for our regional council, and it is an operations committee as well as a strategic view on public transport. Can I congratulate our staff for the fantastic job they've done through COVID-19. When the lockdown occurred, it put them under a huge pressure, and they, with every single one of them has responded well. I've been walking my dog through the CBD daily, talking to bus drivers and security, and the rapport that this council's got is number one. So really pleasing to see, and I know it's frustrating watching what's going on from time to time. Like the start of the school bus service, we had a lot of unknowns there with the new requirements, but the staff have done a magnificent job. So, and today it's a real pleasure to be looking at the instituting of the RITs, the regional integrated ticketing for our buses, which is going to come into force in July. And I've been waiting for that for over 10 years. So that's going to be a huge milestone for us, so that we have better data to base our decision making on. Can I call for apologies, please? I have Mayor Powell, who's been the alternate councillor Baldock, Deputy Mayor Baldock is sitting in for him. Mayor Turner, who's deputised by the Deputy Mayor Andrew Isles, and Councillor Brunning. Are there any further apologies?
Happy to move, Chairman.
Moved by Councillor Thurston and seconded by Councillor Rose. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Aye. Just put your hands up rather than speak. Carried. Public forum. There is no public forum today. Acceptance of late items. I've not been advised of any at this time. Confidential business transferred into the open. There are no matters to be transferred into the open from the public excluded at this stage. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Are there any? I will declare an interest in agenda item 7.7, which is the Te Papa indicative business case. And I'm going to ask my Deputy Chair, Councillor R. Thurston, to chair that agenda item, please. We move now to the Public Transport Committee minutes dated 26th of February 2020. Is there a mover and a seconder that's true and correct?
I'll move.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there's a correction.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yep. Just I was present, but I'm not noted as being there. So for those minutes and for the confidential minutes, Mr. Chair, if I could note that.
Thank you. Noted. Any other corrections needed? So it's been moved by Councillor Thomas and seconded by Councillor Rose. All in favour, please say aye.
I have a matter
Yeah, we'll come to that.
arising.
No, this is just the moving true and correct of the minutes, but we'll go to matters arising once we've got that. So all in favour, please say aye. Hands up. Against, carried. Now, matters arising. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I might have missed it in the reports, but I was just wanting to query progress on the establishment of the community panel. And I have a few questions in and around that. So I just would like, as I say, I might have missed it. So I apologise if I have, but could I just have an update on that? Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask some feedback?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'll
So-
provide an update to that later on in the agenda.
So did you get that? There's going to be an update later in the agenda.
Okay.
Any further items? We'll then move on to 7.1, the chairman's report. And I will ask who's going to give that to me. Jess, is it? I'll ask you to present that in the first instance.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. A number of the items that are in this report will be addressed further on in the agenda. So I will take the report as read, and I will just update on some key matters that won't be addressed later on in the agenda. As Councillor von Dadelsen has said, the COVID response has consumed much of our time over the last 2 months and has impacted on a number of different aspects of public transport and the various aspects of public transport delivery. 1.3, the rest and meal breaks, has had significant, I guess it's been quite detrimental to our ability to comply with that piece of legislation. So from the 7th of May, the relevant provisions of the Employment Relations Act have applied to public transport. You will recall we had a memorandum of understanding that was agreed at the national level between central government, regional councils, unions and operators. That wasn't extended, but the parties are working together really well as they have continued to have the tripartite relationships through the COVID response. And all regional councils are aiming to implement the rest of meal break provisions for drivers as soon as possible. We are aiming to implement our new timetable by the 11th of June in Tauranga. Rotorua and the Eastern Bay of Plenty are already compliant. We do need to have these changes embedded prior to the regional integrated ticketing system being implemented. There will be a period after RITS is implemented where there'll be no changes to timetables. So it's really critical that we get those rest and meal breaks implemented into the timetables before RITS. And in addition to those ERAA changes or the rest and meal breaks changes, we're also tweaking a number of different trips and routes and improving the network across the board. So trying to get those in before RITS is implemented as well. Item 2 in the report, I'll chat more about the Tauranga school bus services when I speak to the COVID report later on in the agenda. But looking pre-COVID, we actually had really good uptake of the free fare initiative across Tauranga. So you'll see there, I've noted that overall student travel was up 75% in February when compared to that same period last year. And then in the first 2 weeks of March, we actually had a 100% increase in patronage when compared to this period last year. And then obviously once COVID hit, those numbers dropped away and the school services did not operate while we were in that lockdown period. And then we've had a gradual increase in services as we've moved through alert level 3 and then alert level 2. Currently, we have significant restrictions on our school buses. We've organised extra buses where possible. We also have some buses that are doing run back services, so we'll do one trip and then run back to get the kids, any other kids that are still at other stops. And then we've adjusted some of the timetables to remove some urban trips, which then allow us to have greater capacity on our school network. There are still limitations. You will recall that for the last couple of years we have had a national driver shortage, and that hasn't gone away. If anything, it's actually increased because we're not able to, or the operators are no longer able to run the the overseas recruitment regimes that they had in place. And the impact of COVID is obviously national, so everyone across the country, or every regional council across the country, is scrambling for more buses and more drivers. So we are doing everything we can, yeah, we haven't had any significant issues this week, but we expect that as people's confidence in the networking increases, and as more people return to work, we will see numbers increase over the next few weeks. So we'll continue to monitor that and do what we can where we can. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about the school services in the COVID report. I just wanted to note as well that we did commence the regional tertiary commuter bus service earlier this year, and that had a really successful start, but again, we had to put that on hold during COVID. We did commence operating those services again from the 18th of May, and during the lockdown period, we actually improved the timetable. We were having some runtime issues, and so the timetable was improved, and we implemented that new timetable for the 18th of May. We also added a bus stop in Kaingaroa village that will be addressed further later on in the agenda. But it was one of the areas we were actually able to take a breath during the lockdown and look to make some improvements, which we've been able to implement when we've resumed the service, which was one positive that's come out of COVID. The other items under item 2 there will be updated later on in the agenda, so I won't go into too much further detail. The only thing I'll note under total mobility is that NZTA have had a really strong focus on ensuring that the same rights are applied to the total mobility services as they have been for other users of public transport across the country. So yeah, we've seen some really good implementation of NZTA policy in that space. And that's probably all I'll update on, unless you have any questions or anything further.
So we've got 2 hands raised so far. I think Mayor Webber, is that you? Gary's iPad?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair.
Yes, so you first, and then Councillor Thompson second.
Thank you. Well, my question is in response to the comment about driver meal breaks. I just would like to know, given we're a subcommittee or a committee of the Regional Council is overarching, we are going to be a responsible employer guidelines. And are we in line with the Road Transport Act, which is very explicit on driver meal breaks and driver maximum hour times, that there are no unintended consequences? Yeah, we might meet the Local Government Act and some other acts, but the fundamental thing around drivers is the Road Transport Act.
Response, Jess?
We are currently, so this is the issue with the ERAA changes, so the Employment Relations Amendment Act that's come in. We are now not compliant with the legislation, and that is a position that is consistent across the country. So we were meant to, all the regional councils and the operators were meant to implement these new timetables so that we could be compliant with the legislation from the 7th of May, but we've been unable to achieve that. And so there was, there's a national steering group which has representatives from unions, operators, Bus and Coach Association, NZTA, Ministry of Transport, and regional councils. We tried to get agreement to extend the Memorandum of Understanding, which put basically allowed us to be non-compliant with legislation for a year. We tried to extend that, but it was agreed by the steering committee that we wouldn't extend that we'd sit in this non-compliance zone, but that all of the parties had to work collaboratively to bring into place those new timetables, which means we will achieve compliance. So it's not an ideal position, and it's something that a lot of regional councils are obviously uncomfortable with, as are we. But because we have that agreement across all of the parties to, I guess, continue to progress to achieve that compliance, there's really nothing more that we can do at this stage. And the only issue will come about if someone seeks to challenge that position. But because all the parties are on board and we do have these really strong tripartite relationships, the steering group has stated that it is confident that that won't occur at this point in time.
Well, I have a supplementary comment. I'd like it noted that my serious concern, there is enough research around about, you know, drivers' meal breaks and drivers' hours. If you put them under pressure, that's where drivers start losing their inattention. And I refer to some other issues further in the paper about, you know, cyclists and that sort of thing. If you're not going to give your people what's appropriate breaks, then you expect problems. Thank you.
Noted. Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Nees.
Well, thank you. Two comments. Firstly, to echo, Chair, your compliments to the staff in terms of the way that they have handled or managed the PT operations during the COVID early response days. Well done. My question relates to item 1.2 of your report, and that is the Bay of Plenty mode shift plan. Can someone explain to me how that plan, or this plan that's being developed, fits with the UFTI mode shift scenarios report? Thanks.
So through the chair, it's Namuta Potasi here, General Manager, Strategy and Science for Bay of Plenty Regional Council. In terms of this mode shift plan, so this is the NZTA Waka Kotahi mode shift plan, which has a few components. One is a regional component across all of the Bay of Plenty region, and the first part of that that's kicked off and will be landing shortly is the Western Bay of Plenty mode shift plan. So that builds on the mode shift work done as part of UFTI, which is an input and is intended to be complementary, if you like, and then that will also all feed into the next drop-down level in terms of the TSP as well.
So thank you for that. Just a supplementary, if I can. I see that the first phase was expected to be completed in May. So Namuta, would you be good enough to just provide us with an update on that completion date? Thanks.
Yes, so through the chair, the report is on track, and I have seen an initial draft, and it is currently going through the partners for comments before looking to be finalised in late May, early June.
Councillor Nees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think Councillor Hughes had her hand up too. Is that right, Heidi? Yep. Okay, a couple of things. One was just following on from Councillor Thompson's question about the mode shift plan. I'd like to see sometime a diagram as to how all the different transport plans fit together, and I'm thinking about the public transport plan, which we will be reviewing. We seem to have a large number of different plans that are all happening, and I'm sure they are designed to integrate, but I cannot see how at this stage the public transport plan, the regional public transport plan, which is about policies, fits with the mode shift plan and the transport system plan and all the other plans. So that's just could we have some sort of integrated picture of the planning framework for PT? My other question, or my other comment is, I really appreciate those appendices that you gave us. they were very interesting to understand the international trends with regard to shocks like COVID-19. And one of the key messages I got out of that was that we should not expect to bounce quickly back to the old volumes of PT usage that we've enjoyed of most recently. So I guess staff are working on the themes that came through those reports and planning for that. So will you be updating us on any issues like that, any big changes that you foresee as a result of the trends seen overseas?
Yes, we will, Councillor Neves. So we will move into our recovery phase, which is categorised by an NZTA definition, and we will report back regularly during that recovery phase. And yeah, as you said, the predictions are that this will have a really long-lasting impact on public transport, and so it will be addressed at a national level as well as regional level.
Thank you. I have Mr. Phil Thomas has his hands up. Councillor Hughes, I understand you want to speak. Can you please go into the participants button and find the raise hand feature, because otherwise we'll miss you. So I'm going for Mr. Thomas, followed by Hughes, followed by Councillor Baldock. Did you put your hand up? And Councillor Rose after that. In that order, please. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, and through the chair, look, just wanted to make a comment on 2.4, the rail update in your report, and was pleased to see that reinstating the branch line to Rotorua was one of the items mentioned in there, and just wanted to reiterate that we see that as being quite important in terms of the rail structure between Tauranga and Hamilton, Auckland, and also Rotorua, because a lot of traffic coming through the port is heading south. So just wanted to reinforce that we saw that as important.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor, who do we go? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I just want to congratulate everyone on taking the new transport mode to work today. We're all it's pretty amazing really that we actually today haven't taken our cars, and before this there was one of us that I think took the bus I used to ride. I don't know who else would take transport, but the opportunity for working from home for solving our transport issues is actually extraordinary. So I think that I'd love this to be seen as a new mode, because and to be brought into our strategy around how we go forward trying to meet our percentage targets. It's very hard for us to look at 20% mode shift, but as soon as we bring working from home into that, then we have the opportunity to maybe create a 30% mode shift, and that really starts to change things for us. So that's the first thing I'd like to suggest, that maybe our PT committee meetings, we take the new mode every time, because I'm really enjoying this Zoom format, and I still have my tracksuit pants on, and I can't do that if I ride my bike into work. So that's the first thing I'd like to recommend. The other thing I'd like to know is there talk around bus driver remuneration? Because we're obviously struggling to get bus drivers across the country. Jessica, I was just wondering whether that's part of the conversation that's happening at the moment.
We have previously had a discussion with this group, or with PTC committee in previous years, around remuneration, and we are one council that does pay the living wage. That's not consistent across the country. We are looking for national guidance on that, and there is a national discussion around that. So yeah, it is something that is being looked at, but we are one of the better councils in that respect.
And the other opportunity, I'm wondering, I mean, I imagine it has been, that's great to hear, Jessica. The other thing is the tourist bus drivers, the tourism industry obviously, has there been any switch over from using tourist bus drivers? Has that been an opportunity?
So one of our operators where we've brought in the additional buses are using buses and drivers that were part of their tourist their tourist transport service. There are some limitations if we don't already have contracts with those operators that run in the tourism sector. There are NZTA procurement requirements, so it's quite a lengthy process. It's really hard to address some of those things quickly. We also have the issue that some operators don't actually want to use their tourist buses for public transport. So yeah, there are a number of limitations, but we have and we continue to explore the various options.
Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just sorry, I was struggling to find the feature to raise my hand. We moved from Zoom to Skype and everywhere else, but I've forgot it now. Thank you. Just thought I'd give you a quick update, given your comment, item 3 in your chairman's report. Tauranga City Council has a council meeting next week, either Wednesday or Thursday, where we will be finalising some decisions. One of them will be whether or not we reconsult if there are significant changes. I note your comments about the capital investment and infrastructure for public transport. So we're working very hard to maintain as much of that as we can because it's important, and you won't have to wait too long to see what that decision is next week. If we do reconsult, then of course there'll be opportunity for the community and of course this committee to have some input into that as well. So thank you.
Good news. Thank you very much, Councillor Baldock. We move now to Councillor Rose, and I think I've seen Mayor Webber's got his hand up to follow.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I, of course, want to thank the staff from Regional Council for the efforts you've put in throughout COVID-19, through our level 3 and level 4 lockdowns. I also just wanted to note a thank you to our bus drivers throughout the past 6 to 8 weeks who have been driving throughout the level 3 and level 4. They have done a very good job, and I can concur with the chairman as well, who has spoken to bus drivers, that the bus drivers are happy and well. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and good report here, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Mayor Webber.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment more than anything in reference to the comments before about driver remuneration relating to the living wage. Not a good benchmark to work from, sorry. If you're looking at what's a fair remuneration for a driver, you need to look at what other industries are paying their drivers. And if it's any help, in 2003, when I was significantly involved, the hourly rate for a driver was $55 an hour, and there were a maximum of 2,000 hours per year. So it might be a benchmark you also want to consider.
Thank you. I'm sure staff will take that on board. So that's all the questions. There's no further questions. We'll move on. Please take the appendix reports as read. They're there for your information. But we now move on to a presentation by Alistair Talbot, Tauranga City Council. Oh, I need a mover and a seconder for that report. I'll so move. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Nees, seconded. All in favour, put your hand up. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Sorry about that. Alistair Talbot, I believe you're going to give us a presentation on the Tauranga City mode shift initiatives.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping all can hear me, and I'll just look to share my screen if that's possible. We've just got a set of slides which will help us just sort of flow through the topics that we'd like to talk to you about. Sorry, teething issues. Can all see the slides, I'm hoping, clearly?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That might be better too. It might be slightly larger. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk with the committee today just on some of the key mode shift activities that Tauranga City Council has underway at present. With me on the call is also Karen Hay, who is responsible for leading our Accessible Streets program. Karen will talk to a couple of the slides that we'll walk through. And also Claire Cassidy. So Claire and I work very closely on a number of these initiatives with a wider team across the council and with partners within the Regional Council, Western Bay and Transport Agency. So I've got a set of slides. There aren't too many. If there are questions, happy to take those as we go. Not overly familiar with sort of recognising how the hand up sort of approach.
That's right. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'll sort of start with the slides. I guess at that highest level, there are a range of activities that council is currently progressing. They vary from regulatory Resource Management Act type processes through to business case development, through to strategy development, through to plan development, and through into implementation. So I'll touch on a few of those key activities just in these slides with the help of Karen and Claire. So the first one, this is one of the key Resource Management Act initiatives that we have underway, and I guess just by its title, it sort of gives away what it is and provides some guidance there. It's very much about setting a new housing framework within our district plan regulatory framework for or to support intensification and a more compact city over time. So this plan change is in development at the moment. It's gone through a recent community engagement exercise, and it applies to our entire suburban residential zone. I guess one of the key points to make just in looking at this initiative is that typically mode shift is one of the objectives of a broader set of objectives that we're trying to achieve through the initiatives we're progressing. In this case, it's about setting up the land use pattern to help support mode shift by delivering a more compact urban environment, tends to follow walking and cycling opportunities and trips associated with that, and a more viable public transport network, and in doing so, mode shift. Flowing from that plan change, and I guess back up into that plan change, is the Te Papa Spatial Plan project. Now, I know you've got a more substantive item on the agenda which discusses this project later in your meeting, so I won't dwell on it too much. We'll get more detail through that later agenda item. I think probably the key point is that this is a very significant opportunity for the city to help support mode shift across one of its key existing urban areas. There's been quite a robust spatial planning process supported by a business case process as well, underway for the last 9 to 12 months. The business case itself is guided by a number of objectives, and one of the key objectives is just noted on the right-hand side of that slide, which talks about how the initiatives from a transport perspective that will support the land use planning will be guided. Some of those key initiatives are very focused on providing more connected and safer walking and cycling networks. They're also framed around, I guess, a stronger public transport network, particularly along Cameron Road. And that's probably all I need to say about that one at the moment, because it leads us into the Cameron Road project. So this is one of the key initiatives that relates very much to starting to implement that Te Papa Spatial Plan. This project is in its preliminary design stage, so we're looking at identifying a preferred concept at the moment for the first stages of Cameron Road's, I guess, transition to support better multimodal transport outcomes. It has quite a short-term focus, a 10-year focus, and that sort of longer-term focus and initiatives will be timed to help support the land use pattern as it rolls out as intended by the Department's Spatial Plan. It's quite a challenging project. As you get closer to implementation, community certainly engage, and there is a very strong community and stakeholder group already established and has been established on this project for some time. There are varying views still at that local community level, and we're having to try to address those as we come up with the concepts to deliver a more multimodal corridor. Those challenges relate very much to how you trade off space across a constrained corridor to meet the demands of community and partners. And at a very practical level, that's how do you value car parking versus walking and cycling networks versus public transport priority versus pedestrian space versus amenity space for tree planting and other amenity within the street. Again, it's guided by business case framework and has very clear objective around increasing active and public transport mode choice across that corridor. Probably the last point to make on that project is that it is very important to wider multimodal outcomes across the city. Cameron Road provides that key connection, as we know, right down to Barks Corner and to Tauriko West. If we are to get Tauriko West framed in the right way, we need to get those connection points to other key destinations across the city centre, supporting multimodal outcomes as well. So that leads into the next slide. So this is just the first of two slides which touch on two key greenfield planning areas that the city is progressing. Tauriko West is already quite a high growth area that is more growth planned, and Mufti Transport Initiative is looking at long-term options within this corridor. Key multimodal elements include the land use plan is first having the land to support the right densities of development and the right employment.
Alistair, can I just ask you to just wiggle your mic? The sound is not good. So just see if we can get it a bit better somehow. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Hopefully that's better. Is that improved?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies. Yeah, so Tauriko West is one of those key growth areas. The focus, I guess, when we're looking at these areas is sort the land use out and ensure that it supports that right urban form and good development to support multimodal transport outcomes. You'll see.
Sorry to interrupt. It was only momentarily better.
Right, I'm not sure what's happening. I've got it up to 100.
Maybe try not using the mic. Some of our mics aren't very good. Some of the headsets aren't very good. Try unplugging it and seeing if the computer is better.
Is that any better?
Yep.
That is better.
Yeah, it sounds better. Try speaking.
I can't hear others now.
Oh, we can hear you.
Just continue.
Sorry, I was unable to hear others. Hopefully you're able to still hear me. I will speak up. So Tauriko West, as I say, one of those key growth areas that the city is progressing at present. Very much a focus on getting the units and the employment density and variety into that area and the amenities to support internalisation of trips in the first instance, and then looking at those transport responses to help deliver a multimodal transport outcome. So very important to this area in terms of the right local and state highway road connections to provide that frame, the bus network and walking and cycling connections. again, this is framed through a business case approach and has a very key and explicit project in terms of multimodal transport outcomes. Heading to the almost the opposite end, the eastern end of the city, another key growth area that the city is working with its smart growth partners and transport partners and developers to help enable. So this is the Wairaki Town Centre and Te Tumu growth area. So it's a long established and planned growth area. We're working through quite a collaborative process with landowners and with the transport partners and smart growth partners to help structure plan that area at the moment. Key multimodal elements include the boulevard corridor, which will have a dedicated bus lane. It will also have separate cycleways that connects down through the centre of the Te Tumu area, and then we'll head back towards the Wairaki Town Centre. The town centre itself will have PT hub facilities, and I guess there's quite a detailed conversation at the moment around how those corridor widths, whether it's the boulevard or Te Akaroa Drive, are planned now so that they're future-proofed and those multimodal elements are ingrained as that development rolls out, noting there are wider issues still to resolve with landowners in that area to enable growth. So if it's okay, I'll just pass to Karen Hay, Mr. Chair. Karen's responsible for the accessible street slides, and there's just 2 slides, and then I can come back and talk about 2 slides.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and councillors, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present to the committee today. As Alistair indicated, I'm leading what we refer to as our Accessible Streets program on behalf of Tauranga City Council. And perhaps just before I get into a bit of detail, providing some context, the Accessible Streets is as it's now named, and the previous cycle plan is intending to recognise the broader benefits that this program is intending to bring. Alistair, would you mind going back just to the previous slide initially? And that is around improving safety and connectivity for pedestrians, considering future e-mobility and how we integrate that with the public transport network. This package of work forms part of the Smart Growth and UFTI proposals. So it's not a program in itself, but a part of a bigger solution in solving Tauranga transport challenges. So what the program's really intending to bring is really looking at how we connect people from where they live to where they work, learn and play. It's largely focused on trips to school and work, looking to support health and environmental outcomes. That is a significant benefit that this program brings in terms of CO2 emission reductions, as well as contribution to health benefits. It's really looking to support the wider context of supporting livable communities, creating a vibrant city, and the urban density proposals that Alistair was referring to earlier. And we certainly recognise the importance of having an integrated network that provides those secondary benefits from tourism. A good example is how we connect into and from Amakoro through to the city, and equally in the lower parts of Pipamau into the Tupuki, Pangaroa cycle trail areas. They're looking to provide a comprehensive network. Thanks, Alistair. We've completed the business case, and that was endorsed by Council recently to be submitted to the agency's board as part of the UFTI business case. And some of the benefits the program is intending to bring is quite substantial in terms of mode shift. We'll have, currently we have around 11,000 trips, increasing to 33,000 trips by 2043. And the reason it's 2043 is it could be earlier. It is contingent on when we have a completed network in place. And that's an increase of around 190%. Equally increase in cycle kilometres travelled to between 74 and 103,000, and that's an increase of 180 and 250%. And then forecast demands, as I indicated earlier, this business case is only focused on school and work-related trips and connecting those key destinations. And it's likely underestimated given the potential for tourism and recreational use across the city. The results shown, this is really interesting, 3,200 fewer commuter trips. So if we stacked 3,200 vehicles in a row in a parking lot or in a line, bumper to bumper, that equates to 14 kilometres of travel, and that could extend the whole of Welcome Bay Road, a trip from Te Puke into the Bayfair area, or from Greerton to the Mounts. So it is a substantial contribution, but as I say, part of a bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. This is a...
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we've got 2 more slides if that's okay.
Okay, if we can speed it up, because we've got a lot on the agenda and I want to keep it moving if I can, please.
I'll do my best. So this is just to identify that there are other policy initiatives that we are also progressing within Tauranga City Council. So parking is one of those key levers to help support a more multimodal transport system. There has been a level of investigation on this issue already, and that matter has been now referred to the UFD team to confirm how the parking direction for Western Bay could be influenced and informed as it moves forward. Obviously a very sort of challenging issue around sort of community acceptance of that direction that'll need to work through very carefully in the future. Final slide, there are a number of other initiatives which we haven't sort of gone into any detail on here, which are also very mode shift focused. There's the Western Bay Community Transport System Plan. That's the step on from UFD to help translate UFD into network form solutions, and will help us understand where we have those competing demands from different modes, how we provide for those at a design level and a sort of a route level. We're also obviously progressing investigations into a number of public transport facilities like the Arataki facility at Bayfair, or in the Bayfair area, and implementing a public transport infrastructure program. Park and Ride is also one of those matters that is continuing to be investigated under the Transport System Plan project. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that presentation. This is a really important issue, and I'm sure our regional council is right in behind supporting this. It isn't information only, so can we keep our questions succinct, please, because time's moving on and we've got a lot to get through. Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Hughes, and then Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Question, Alistair. Is it intended that there be a link between 15th Avenue, Takatimu Drive, and therefore the Northern Arterial?
So that's been announced as part of the NZTA's upgrade program. So that's a long planned connection between 15th Ave and Takatimu Drive. And yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I just have 2 questions. I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to align the way we talk about the years and the targets for various programs and plans, because we've got 2043 coming up in the cycle plan. We've got 2000, and like it's very, very hard then to go, okay, so what does that look like across the network? Is there some work being done to kind of align the way we frame up our talk, the way that we talk around that?
I agree, it would be very helpful to have that alignment around objectives and KPIs so that we're aware of what we were targeting and the benefits associated with that when they fall. I guess UFD will provide that frame to then allow us to understand how things can relate back. So you know, I can't say we're absolutely across that right now, but it is something that I think we need to be aware of and get that alignment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one more question. In terms of Tauriko, we seem to have very good information about Te Tumu in terms of how we're getting the transport alignment with PT in that area. Tauriko, for those 3,000 homes, when I look at the plans that they've shown us, we're still looking at 15 to 24 homes per hectare. So it's still very much a sprawl model, and there doesn't seem to be much kind of we haven't seen much around what they're actually doing for public transport in that new development. So could you enlighten us as to how we're really looking at that, and whether we think that we're going to be meeting our long-term goals through this new Tauriko subdivision?
Sure. So there has been some investigation, or a specific multimodal investigation, to help identify those things that will support the right transport outcomes in that area. That work is still underway across the partnership to understanding how does that influence the structure planning and the land use planning for Tauriko West. There's also some broader work that staff are engaged with Hamilton, and working together with Hamilton City Council to see if there are opportunities to increase those yields. That work's ongoing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Two questions. One is, does Tauranga City have carbon reduction targets and carbon emission reduction targets to underpin your mode shift strategy? So that's one high level question, and then I've got a very specific one.
I can't answer that, I'm afraid. What we do have is UFD that is developing under an objective that identifies an environmental set of KPIs and relevant objective. But I'm afraid I'm not across the board organisations' carbon reduction objectives.
Your second question, Jane?
Sorry, Councillor Nees, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. My second question is around Te Tumu and Wairaki. I see that it looks like there's a second bridge over the Kaituna River. Is that right? Down the end? And I was just wondering, I had seen sort of some perhaps futuristic forecast planning, but has that become a definite plan? And is that going through to the regional land transport plan?
So that has been a long-standing issue as well, as I'm sure you're aware. As I understand it, it's not precluded, but it might not be fully planned. I might just ask Claire Cassidy to comment on that. She's more across the detail of the planning for Te Tumu. Claire, are you able to comment further?
Hi, yes, through the chair. So yes, we are not precluding the Kaituna link, as it's called, which hooks into that eastern end of Te Tumu. But for the current plan for Te Tumu, it's not included within the structure plan or the development contributions. I believe that one of the UFD programs includes potential for that link, which is linking to wider growth in the east. So yes, it's on the plan, it's shown as an indicative link, but it's not something we're actively planning for at this time.
Thank you. There've been, I'm just checking, Councillor Rose and then Mayor Webber, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to quickly bring up rail again, because it's a big thing that people talk about, or that's been talked about in particular with UFD and other areas as well. Alistair, is there any talk of potential rail connecting the new Wairaki and Te Tumu areas at all, or would you say that's still in the mix a little bit?
So the current plan, and Namuta may like to comment too from a broader RIFTI perspective. So our current planning is looking at high frequency dedicated bus lanes into the Te Tumu area. One of the UFTI scenarios, so those longer term post, I think it's post 30-year scenario,
Yep.
yeah, post 30
Yep.
30 years land use scenarios considers rail connections. But that's still to be worked through in terms of what the final preferred UFTI program is and the role of rail within that.
Can I just add to that? Sorry, Alistair, in that the boulevard bus lanes are protected bus lanes, that also future-proofs for technology like trackless trams or even light rail as well.
And absolutely, and just to add to that through the chair, it's Namuta here, through the UFTI project, the Kiwi Rail report will be released shortly as well.
Thank you. Last question is Mayor Webber, and then we must move on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is more to you, following on the comments about Tauriko 300 houses and public transport. I would have thought that's outside the scope, so I wouldn't want of this committee. I would have thought putting more staff time into that by this committee and the staff that support it is not required. That's a Tauranga City issue for them to work out what they're going to do and then work out what public transport requirement is. We shouldn't be looking at it too much, I wouldn't have thought, because it's in the hands of Tauranga City.
I would concur with you completely. I let that conversation go, but at this stage, it is an urban planning issue for the city rather than. But all we ask is that they keep us if they with their plans, that we do it collaboratively insofar as if there's a requirement for capital or OPEX expenditure from us in the future, that we can budget it into our forecasting as well. So, but I totally concur with what you're saying, Mayor Weber. Councillor Hughes, you've had a chance to talk. This is a report from your own council. If you could be really brief, because we've got a hell of a lot to get through this committee, and I want to keep it moving if I can. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. It was just one brief question around intercity rail and whether we are thinking now about where we would put a station in regard to a bus interchange and ferry terminal and that kind of alignment for the future.
Demetra, you...
Yep, so through the chair, you'll see once the Kiwi Rail report comes out, and I do understand that it's been pre-circulated to councillors, that indicates the potential for some locations of potential stations. So obviously this work is ongoing, and yeah, I'll probably leave it there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, so that's the end. Thank you, Alistair, for your presentation. It's always good to know what the city is doing, and we've had a few presentations in recent days, so that's good. Can we take a 10-minute break now, please? So we will meet back. Actually, it's going to be an 8-minute break. We're going to meet back at 20 to 11, if you would, please. 20 to 11. Thank you. We'll give 1 minute for people to get back because there's still a few blank spots. Okay, we have a quorum, so we're going to keep moving. We move to 7.2, one page. We're taking as read the reports in the appendix of the last item. And we're moving on to 7.2, Public Transport Service Delivery Update and COVID-19 Impacts, page 125 of your agenda. And I'll ask Jessica Easton and Debbie Highland to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so there's this report, and then there is the Arataki and the report relating to the RITS implementation that was distributed under separate cover that will be discussed together. They're all quite closely linked as it all deals with the impacts of COVID on our public transport and network and delivery. So Debbie Highland is also on the line and can respond to any questions, and will present after me with some of the patronage impacts and also the financial impacts. My report's largely focused on sort of the NZTA policy and the impact of that on our network. So yeah, page 125 of your agenda. As we've already discussed this morning, COVID's had a really significant impact on public transport across the country, or internationally as well. We're still in the recovery phase. We have significant patronage restrictions. Hang on just 1 second. Excuse my coughing, not COVID, just an itch in my throat. Yeah, so we've had significant restrictions across the network. I have to emphasise the comments made earlier and pass on my thanks as well to our operators and the drivers. Oh my goodness, sorry, excuse me.
Debbie, would you like to come in and do your update just while Jessica's indisposed?
Absolutely. Can
Thank
you hear
you.
me?
We can.
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to share my screen and get up a short presentation. Tēnā koutou rangatira mā. Thank you. I'd just like to present, my name's Debbie Highland, sorry, Finance and Transport Operations Manager at the Bay of Plenty Regional Council.
So, sorry, could we have a bit more volume, please?
You could if the technology allowed it, but I'll just try yelling. If you can hear that a little bit better.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Testing. So we have presented on the separate supporting agenda on page 12. We talked to our public transport Arataki Tuarua performance monitoring report up to the 9 months ended 31st of March 2020. The appendices, the supporting document, is a very sort of comprehensive document. Supporting this presentation is obviously Jessica Easton, our Service Delivery Manager, and also our Ruth Feist, who is our Public Transport Planning Team Leader. In terms of our patronage highlights, I just wanted to draw through some positive results pre-COVID. Regional bus patronage was just slightly over 2 million trips up to the 9 months ended 31st of March. That was an increase of 8.2% on the same period last year. And had COVID not taken that around 70,000 trips in the last week of March, I think we would have been up at approximately 25% on the prior year. Acknowledging a large contributor, obviously, to our increase in growth has been our Tauranga Schools trial service. We had patronage continuing to grow again through the quarter, but looking ahead to the fourth quarter, we are basically expecting our capacity to be around in between 30 and 40% under alert level 2. And as a result, our full year forecast for patronage is circa 2.3 million trips. I've included on the presentation slide sort of our baseline figures of 70,000 trips per week, and you can see through the alert levels, the service significantly reduced as our customers obviously only use the service for essential services. As heading into level 2, we have seen a good pickup in patronage with 20,000 trips over the past week, and we are at around about 28% of our baseline figures. I just wanted to draw some highlights from one of the appendices here around our regional patronage. In particular, our Tauranga school service. I just really wanted to acknowledge that this is being funded by targeted rates to the tune, by Tauranga targeted rates, to the tune of $1 million in 1920 and increasing almost to $2 million through to extend the trial through to the end of this year, and certainly through to annual plan 2021. Drawing through some of the negative trends for Rotorua, noting that there is a network review for Rotorua planned in early 2021. And again, just recognising that our year-to-date performance, had COVID not hit, would have resulted in us achieving our LTP targeted patronage of approximately 2.87 million trips. In terms of our financial summary, we are anticipating $300,000 lower revenue, so a full year forecast of $29.8 million against a budget of $30.1 million, noting that approximately $1.5 million of fare revenue foregone due to COVID impacts, which will be offset, hopefully, well, certainly by Waka Kotahi underwriting that. Lower operating costs set out in the Arotaki document and are a combination of a number of underspends across a range of areas, also associated with the RITS project, as well as some underspends on consultancy. COVID-19 hasn't had a huge impact on our cost base at this point. Obviously, the NZTA is underwriting some of the net increases, so for example, additional cleaning costs, but overall we are forecasting higher reserves, which will be available for Regional Council to use in 2021 annual plan to lower the rates increases and also to cushion any further impact of COVID. At the beginning of the year, we established, Bay of Plenty Regional Council established an internal customer call centre and contact centre. The key milestones for that initiative are really taking on the Tauranga schools complaints and inquiries in February. The team is also mobilising to support the accelerated delivery of RITS commencing in June, with go live planned for later in July. And ultimately, we will be looking to take the Bay Bus, all the Bay Bus queries also from July. Obviously, COVID-19 have had fewer customer complaints, and the majority of our resourcing has been on supporting the transport service delivery. Some of the peaks in the numbers that you're seeing through 2018-19 in particular are due to the service failures in the Tauranga network at the beginning of 2019, which was swiftly remediated through some very excellent intervention. And as a result, over the past 12 months, we have certainly seen some improvements, big improvements through the Western Bay network and the support of NZ Bus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. We have got a question from Mayor Webber.
Yeah, thank you. Because of circumstances, it looks as though we're going to end up with a net operating surplus for public transport. A lot of that, the rating, a lot of that is by targeted rates. But on your last bullet point, there is higher reserves. That's general reserves. Is Regional Council able to shift from targeted rates to general reserves, or is I just wanted, and that's a question on it. I
The
didn't think that was possible.
relates to our the higher reserves relates to our targeted rate current accounts. So it is the targeted rates across the region that we will have the underspend building up that can be used in 2021 to lower our targeted rates for public transport. There's no general funding other than in our regional service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Very good report, might I add, and thank you for all your work with your team for keeping Councillor Thurston and myself as Chair and Deputy Chair up to date through the COVID, which we then passed on to others, but been really, really impressed with the level of data that you've been able to get us, so thank you. Do you want to move straight on? Let's, we should receive the public service delivery update and COVID-19 impacts, page 125. That's to be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Happy to move, Chairman.
So that was Councillor Thurston to move and Mayor Webber to second, was it?
No, it wasn't. Have you completely, I understand we've still got a discussion on Appendix 3 yet, have we? Which is the capital component.
Okay, we'll sorry, I'm rushing
so through you, Chair, obviously there is approximately $1.1 million underspend in CapEx that primarily relates to the regional integrated ticketing solution. We will be carrying that forward, that funding forward into 2021 and largely consuming that through July and August when it's intended that the new regional integrated ticketing system will be fully functional across the region.
Sorry, Mr. You're trying to complete agenda item 7.3, of which Appendix 3 covers off a fair bit of big questions for me. Are you intending to go through that component, or are you just going to stop at the transport patronage bit?
I hadn't realised we're on 7. We've done 7.2 and part of 7.3, but you're dead right. We missed the third appendix. So let's finish that conversation before we move them all. So have you got a further question, or are you waiting? Yes, I've got you, Mr. Thomas.
So
I've got some serious questions, I would have thought.
Okay, well, can we first of all just let Debbie finish that the appendix 3 then? Are you?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the Western Bay of Plenty Public Transport Implementation Plan. It is a list of sort of committed projects through the partner councils that was agreed, I guess, through in August 2019 meeting with the Public Transport Committee. And largely it gives greater visibility of those projects that have a positive impact and benefit for public transport in the Western Bay. The contributions from the partners, in particular Tauranga City Council, have come through from Claire Cassidy, and hopefully if Claire is still on the line. The reason I didn't invite Claire to talk to it is because a lot of those projects have just been covered with Alistair's presentation. And I can, if TCC, Alistair and Claire are still on the line, they could support any questions in relation to the TCC-led projects, and I'm happy to support responses around the BO Plenty Regional Council-led projects. Thank you.
Claire, are you available to comment?
Maybe ask the Gary's question.
We'll move on then to Mayor Webber questions.
Thank you, and unfortunately I have quite a few. I note going through in the infrastructure in the first thing that a lot of bus stops have been installed in parts of it, and I'll take credit for it's at Western Bay. But following on from Alistair Torbett's presentation, I see here when you get down to infrastructure, We've been investigating things since 2017. We also have in 2019, we'll adopt a bus stop improvements action plan and design standards. Well, I've built dairy factories in less time than it's taken us to do this. And I just wonder why it takes us 3 years to design a bus stop when in Western Bay, we've actually installed the sodding things. You know, there seems to be some capital, you know, I'm trying to get to what's the responsibility of this committee when projects sit around for 4 years and they're pretty fundamental. I see, you know, we're talking about now in Mr. Talbot's presentation about bus interchanges, but they were supposed to be done back in 2017. So, you know, you might be working out why I stood away for the last 3 years. You know, I'd like to see some progress, a report on when these are actually going to happen.
Response, Debbie?
In the absence of the TCC staff, I would note this is probably one of the more difficult quarter ends to report on, given the situation with TCC's consultation on its annual plan for 2021. At this stage, we're really awaiting the full, potentially another round of consultation before confirming sort of the funding for 2021. And I do know that certainly around the bus stop improvement planning, some of that is all wrapped up, and I guess COVID-19 has had a big impact in that ability for that to progress. But again, I think we can take the questions and then again refer those through to TCC for further detail.
Well, no, sorry, a supplementary, Mr. Chair. I just want, you know, and we had a conversation offline on Wednesday. Why are all of the mayors involved in this committee when the real issue seems to be, you know, Tauranga City is the main player? Is it not better to take this just a Tauranga City committee, because, you know, most of us actually done our stuff in the other areas, and when you're waiting 4 years and we're still no definite, and this is critical. I just wonder why.
Yeah, Mayor Webber, I totally agree with you, and it's where collaboration hits the road, and that's what we as governance need to make sure that we do see a strategic plan that it's actually going through, because no one council can achieve this on their own. And this is the core bus stops are the core responsibility of the TLA, but you can be sure that our staff and our council is prepared to help if necessary, but we do need good information to base any decision making on. So like you, I totally share your frustration on this. But to say, because we've been frustrated doesn't mean that it's the wrong committee to be doing it. We actually have to learn from the past though, and actually see outcomes. And the next report we're going to have is on RITs, Regional Integrated Ticketing, and I've been waiting for 10 or 12 years for that to happen. But it's going to finally happen, Gary, and I'm excited about that, because then we will have good data to base to get better functionality through our plan. But if staff want to comment further.
Well, no, sorry, I'm sorry, I just can't give in on this. Strategic planning is not just what you'd like to do, it also includes how you're going to fund it and when you're going to fund it. So could I ask staff, if they're doing any reports in the future, if there is no funding line and no timing line, don't even bring the paper up for our discussion. Because to me, I will not, you know, it's just bad business to even get yourself into that position.
So through you, Chair, all of these projects are committed and funded, and the project updates have been provided by the council partners. And yes, there are some delays as noted in these high-level project updates.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I may respond to some of Mayor Webber's comments.
Well, has Mayor Webber finished?
more given up than finished.
Well, can I assure you that just sitting around the room here in the council, we will get a report back on this. I share your frustration, and I welcome Deputy Mayor Larry Baldock to further explanation.
Well, I think we would welcome the chance to present with our staff at the next meeting about the issues that are being raised. The bus stop issue, of course, we were moving forward on very quickly this year until COVID, because as Mayor Webber knows, you have to get residents' approval before you can put bus shelters in outside their properties. A little bit easier in the country where there's a lot more space. But we have a long list of residents that have objected to it, and we have to go through a proper hearing process. It's a real pain, but it does delay things. It's not a budgeting issue. We are looking into it, but also the interchanges over at Farm Street. It has been one of the biggest issues of consultation with the residents there. We're still working through all of that, but let's not forget the changes that occurred in the PT blueprint about the model that was used. But I think it's best if we respond to it with a staff presentation back to you at the next meeting, or even subsequently in a written form to all of the committee members. But we do agree with you, Mayor Webber, that we think a committee that ran Tauranga City's bus, both into both the service and the infrastructure needs, would be a much more efficient way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I'll move now to Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, and through the chair. And I'm sorry, my questions and comments are actually about the patronage summary. You just hadn't noticed my hand before, so I just wanted to express my concern around the drop in figures of patronage for Rotorua and some of our eastern Bay of Plenty areas and our smaller towns. Obviously, COVID-19 has had an effect, but they are major drops in patronage. So I think it is important for us to be looking at what's causing those drops urgently, rather than it sort of going on into the future before we look at them. I understood, and there was a mention about the network review for Rotorua happening in 2021. I understood that was about to happen now, and I absolutely hope it is happening now. I've seen some correspondence to that effect. But I do worry that the only area where we've really seen a dramatic increase was in the Bay Hopper Schools bus for Tauranga, and I think that really represents the value of the free transport for school children, and I would really love to see that trial expanded to other areas, including Rotorua. We're going to be very badly hit by COVID. We're a tourism town, and things like that would be a real assistance to our community. I guess the other comment I would make just at the end, there was the mention about a profit or a surplus being made, and that leaving the ability to reduce the targeted rates. I would really rather see that excess being put into increasing levels of service rather than a reduction in the targeted rate. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. But before I ask staff to respond, just to say we are in most unusual times with COVID, and so I don't think we can take anything out of the patronage figures as they are now. These were emergency times. It's interesting that the school buses we've given, we haven't had support, from my understanding, from NZTA for the free school service. So there is a targeted rate, and to look to carry it on into the next year is talking, I think, off memory, is $1.86 million. So, Jessica, would you like to comment?
Yes, I was just going to comment. We are obviously still restricted in terms of.
I've got your pie here.
We are still restricted in terms of capacity at the moment. which is the NZTA policy under alert level 2. We have been given an indication that under alert level 1, we will be able to resume our normal capacity on public transport. So that is really promising, because initially we were told there would still be some restrictions. We're waiting for that policy to come through in writing to us. But there will be a national approach to patronage strategy to really try and bring people back onto public transport as we move into that recovery phase. I think that will really assist us regionally in terms of our approach.
Thank you. I have Councillor Thurston, followed by Councillor Mayor Webber. Has your hand gone down and then gone up again, or?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Following Councillor Thurston.
Chairman, just a couple of quick points to His Worship Mayor Webber. Look, it isn't for want of help being offered on our part to TCC with regards infrastructure, and particularly the bus shelters. That's on the table and has been sitting there for a long time. There is genuine goodwill on our part to assist TC in some form on that issue. If I can just say another quick question to my good friend Phil, in terms of patronage in Rotorua, in the days of the inner city hub, Phil, in Pukewatua Street, the buses were bringing in excess of 1 million passengers a year. But when RLC moved the hub from Pukewatua Street to Arawa Street, that's when the patronage started to go on a slippery slide to nowhere. And the other issue I'd just like to remind us all, the heavy focus, Phil, on school buses in Tauranga was born out of the need to initiate a pilot which commenced in Welcome Bay to see if we could take some pressure off the transport infrastructure of Tauranga. And I stress, it was never conceived, Heidi, as a social issue. It was never conceived as a social welfare issue. It was all about taking the pressure off infrastructure in Tauranga as a pilot. And that's why there's been this, and justifiably, Phil, you'd be concerned as to why is there not the same emphasis on school buses in Rotorua. It's all about taking the pressure off our colleagues in Tauranga. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. And Mayor Webber.
Yeah, mine's just a minor component, following on from Councillor Baldock's comments. The bus shelters that were installed in line 1 of page 1 of the Appendix 3 were actually in urban areas called Te Puke, Kadikadi and Amokaroa. They weren't in the country.
Noted, thank you. So there don't appear to be any further questions. So what I'd do before we move on to integrated ticketing, these last 2 reports are a receive only. So I would like to call for, I asked before, and I can't remember if we got a mover and seconder to receive the first report, the Transport Service Delivering COVID Update. Do I have a mover? Mover, Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Rose. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Looks like it's carried. And the second one is to receive the report, the public transport performance monitoring up till March 2020. Do I have a mover? Mayor Webber, seconded by Mr. Thomas. All those in favour, please say aye. Hands up. Against? Carried. We move on to the integrated ticketing solution, my favourite. So who's leading that out? Debbie, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I will take the report as read, if that's okay. I've got a couple of points. Obviously, there is a long history to the regional integrated ticketing, and it is a precursor to a national ticketing solution under a project called Project Next. RITS's involves 9 regional councils, and basically there has been a revised strategy to accelerate the implementation as a result of COVID-19, which I think is in line with some of that earlier international research that you'd perused. RITS is obviously going to deliver significant benefits to our customers, obviously with paperless ticketing and online top-ups and interregional capability. Obviously, it will also be supporting our contact tracing and help us potentially to avoid cash handling. And I think the real value is in the in-depth utilisation information with the tag on, tag off. So COVID obviously presented a number of considerations, particularly around fares with the fare-free period in place through to the 30th of June, but still noting that we're awaiting confirmation or clarification from Waka Kotahi in terms of our funding sort of post 30th of June. We are being encouraged by Waka Kotahi to develop our fare reinstatement plan, and this proposal basically seeks to align the fare reinstatement with the RITS rollout. Our current ticketing system obviously is very manual and does require face-to-face. It does present a number of health and safety considerations and even at alert level 2 around cash fares and cash top-ups on buses, and obviously for our Super Gold card holders. So looking at RITS as another solution for some of these considerations, we are looking basically to move forward with early removal of the existing ticketing equipment, the implementation of new hardware, and a seamless transition, all things going well, through to a new B card. And noting that Waka Kotahi and ZTA are fully supportive of the accelerated delivery. In terms of our patronage, I just wanted to address some of the consideration around sort of modelling where we think patronage is going to land. A local government has produced 3 sort of scenarios, although hopefully the 4th one, which is we move through to level 1 and on to the new normal, is our preferred scenario. But at the moment, we're just considering what it could mean for an extended period of level 2, COVID-19 alert level 2. And so you see there that at the end of the day, we're still forecasting a gradual rebound from the impact of COVID-19, and I guess working towards the strategy of helping to shape that longer term behaviour, active modes of transport and so on. The big focus at the moment is obviously, and this report is seeking your endorsement for the accelerated delivery and our fare reinstatement plan. Next week at this point, operationally, we're scheduled to have our existing ticketing equipment removed. From the 1st of June, we're looking to have all of our buses kitted out, or the majority of our buses kitted out with the new hardware. The B card website, which is a key touch point for our customers, will be active from the 15th of June and will support our rollout of the new cards to our customers. And we are looking to go live with RITS in Rotorua, Whakatane, and on partially our regional service on the 20th of July, and then Tauranga on the 27th of July. The key to our success will be the approach around prepaid B cards and distribution through a third-party network, which we're currently working through. Originally, we're anticipating going live towards the end of this year. There is a significant national communications and marketing campaign, and we will be using our existing networks to really reach out to our customers, in particular our Super Gold card holders. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. That's excellent. Can I say that I totally endorse what you're doing and the speed up.
Chairman, you're frozen.
Am I frozen still?
We lost a couple of minutes there with you, so hopefully it wasn't too important, Chairman.
Oh, come on. All I'm saying is that's the one thing we can thank COVID-19 for, is that we're going to make sure that we get RITS underway ASAP so that we have really good data for future planning of our bus routes. Councillor Nees,
Thank you, Mr.
you've
Chair.
got a question?
Yes, two. Firstly, the extension of the child fare concession from 16 to 19, that's only for school children. Is that so?
Yes.
Correct.
So I suggest maybe we put that rider in the recommendation, just to make that very, very clear.
Thank you.
My other question is about implementation. I understand we're one of the later regional councils to implement RITs. Have there been any major issues with implementation? And if so, what sort of planning have we got in place to try and minimise any issues or risks with service delivery as we go live?
Thank you, Councillor Nees. There were three sort of focus areas for the delivery team, the national sort of delivery team, as I understand it, which has been around the website. It has been around some of the software bugs, which a lot of the major ones have been remediated, and it's been around some of the reporting and the back office capability. We've received assurance that all of that is looking very well. Certainly the website is going to be launched very shortly. There's ongoing testing at a regional level to ensure that the software is performing appropriately. And we have assurance from the back office and Otago Regional Council that they're ready to deliver the reporting that's required at a local level.
Councillor Mayor Webber.
Thank you. I presume it's just a typo, but in the rollout, ICT Puki's been left off.
It should be wrapped into what the services.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
No further. Oh yes, Councillor Rose.
Sorry to put in the late in there, Mr. Chair. Hey, I just wanted to bring up where is it? Yeah, that oh damn it. No, don't mind. I'll ask you in a later time.
All right. There've been no further hands up, I don't think. So we move to the motions, the recommendations of this committee, and there are 7 there. Councillor Nees, you were looking for an alteration where?
Sorry, in number 7, Mr. Chair, just to add in for school children or for those attending school. Because as it reads, it's just for people up to 19, whether or not.
Thank you.
Yes, it's an extension of that for the school-aged children. Do apologise, Councillor Nees.
So through Mr. Chair, can I just clarify that with you, Debbie? So is that not all children? Is it just for school children?
I think Councillor Nees is correct in terms of the current concession applies to children aged up to 16 and at school, and therefore that recommendation would be 19 and at school.
So through Mr. Chairman, could we clarify that with the Regional Integrated Ticketing Consortium to make sure we are consistent with the national picture? So if the recommendation is amended to say and is consistent with national regional integrated ticketing, then we will follow the national program.
Thank you.
That sounds appropriate. Torna, can you read out what your interpretation of number 7 is, please?
Unmute myself. Okay, so the first part, it's obviously unchanged, and then at the end we added for those attending school, and this is where, which is consistent with national guidelines, which should be in consistent with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is everybody clear on the recommendations 1 to 7? Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Nees. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to, let me see, 7.5, page 137, Urban Form and Transport Initiative Update. Ruth, I think you're presenting this.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Unfortunately, the members of the UFD project team are unable to attend today's meeting. So I've only got two quick points to make, otherwise I'll take the report as read and be available for any questions that we can answer. So the 2 points, the key points to make are that the final report, the UFD final report, is due to go to the 17th of June Smart Growth Leadership Group meeting. And following on from that, obviously the implications of public transport planning and future operations will be reported to the next meeting of the PTC in August this year. And then we're available for questions once we can answer.
Yes, I have a question from Mayor Webber.
So sorry, it's not a question. I was going to move only recommendation 1, that we receive the report or Urban Form and Transport Initiatives UFD. We cannot endorse the Urban Form because we haven't got the final report.
You do make a very fair point, I think. Staff, have you got any response to that? Namuta?
It's coming in coming weeks, Chairman, so it's not far away, but I concur with Mayor Webber.
Namuta?
Yep, absolutely. Through the chair, the intention of that recommendation number 2 was to highlight the public transport components of the modelling, which is feeding into UFD. So on pages 140 and 141 of your agenda, there's a high-level overview of the public transport inputs. In particular, I draw your attention to the upside-down triangle, which looks at the different time frames in which different public transport services need to be provided. So obviously, at the bottom of the triangle, we have our PT daily operations. In the next 0 to 2 years, we note that there will be some tweaks and network changes that will be required. From 2 to 5 years, there's obviously going to be some incremental changes required as a result of UFD. In the 3 to 10 year time frame, and obviously at the moment we're working on the regional land transport plan and the changes associated with that. We've got the slightly longer term immediate into the 30-year time frame of the TSP, which is looking at the detailed form which comes out of UFD. And then of course with UFD as well, you've got the longer term time horizons, which do look to provide a 30-year plus integrated urban form and transport picture to cater for 400,000 people. So this was really looking for endorsement of the modelling PT components and inputs which are outlined in your report.
All right, so the wording in 2...
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I refer back to my earlier statement about full reports. It's nice reading. It's nice timelines. How's it going to be funded? Who's going to fund it? And are they lined up to fund it? You know, is this in annual plans? Because I go back, it's been in annual plans for since 2017. It hasn't happened. So I don't believe we can move the second recommendation because we haven't seen a full report of the financial implications and who's going to fund it and by when.
Through the chair, we can bring a report back that referred to in August, following the outcomes of UFD and the analysis of that.
Chairman, I'm happy to move that we delete part 2 of the recommendation.
There's been moved that we delete part 2. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yes, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Borak. All right, we'll move that as an amendment that we delete. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So the substantive now is just one, that we receive the report. Do I have a mover for that?
So moved, Chairman. Lyon.
So moved by Councillor Thurston, seconded by Mayor Webber. All in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We move to page 143, the
Yes.
annual plan topics for public transport. Namuta.
Through the chair, Morena Chair and Councillors, I have today with me as well Andrew Williams, the Transport Planner. As you've noted, Chair, we're on page 143 of your agenda, Annual Plan Topics for Public Transport. Through the chair, I'll take this report as read and just touch on a few key points. This paper is really to close the loop out in terms of those annual plan discussions and feedback going up and through. You'll recall we've been on a journey for this one, probably started last year in September with a network review which was presented to the PT Committee, followed by the PT Committee meeting in February where we presented the fare review and then also a paper on annual plan topics to be taken through. We had that fed into the annual plan itself, the annual plan information document which was released. We have feedback on that document coming back to our councillors for a deliberations discussion shortly. So I would just note that we've taken on board the committee's previous recommendations in relation to noting that some topics will need to await the outcome of key documents which are still about to land, in particular the Urban Form and Transport Initiative, which will be landing shortly, as well as the outcomes of the Waka Kotahi NZTA multimodal plan. And the idea being, in terms of that recommendations previously made to the committee and confirmed, being that we look to align future changes in the network and also the review of the fares. So I would like to bring you to the recommendations on page 143, starting on page 143 of your agendas. And the other point I would just note is I had a question before in relation to monitoring of the trials in which we're undertaking, just to confirm that we are working with partners to look at how best we monitor the trials, in particular the impacts on congestion. Thank you.
Thank you. I've three hands that I can see up. Councillor Hughes, Mayor Webber, and then Councillor Thompson. In that order, please.
My question, sorry, related to the UFTI report, and I just see on there that with the PT and the transport plan, the percentage of mode share that we're after for PT that doesn't enable us to meet our climate targets in 2030 or 2050. So how can we sign up for that if we've signed up? How do we align those two? Where do we start looking at how we align having to meet our climate targets with our PT percentage of people on PT? Thanks.
Can I say that we've moved on from that report and we've received that report? So
my hand was up at that stage, but that's all good. No worries. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, but it's your comments are duly noted. However, okay. So you will be able to have further input into UFTI through your own council as well. We'll have a look at that. Thank you. Moving on, Mayor Webber.
Well, mine wasn't a question. I was going to move recommendation 1 and 2, A to F, because these are just subsequent recommendations from earlier decisions.
Correct. Can we just on 2C move that to 120,000? There's a zero missing. But yes. with that, so you're moving the recommendation, the entire recommendations.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take note of that. And no, that's the only one. So we have a seconder. I saw a hand go up from Councillor Thomas. Mr. Thomas. So that's two people. Any further discussion on this before I put it? We move the report. All those in favour, the recommendations. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you. We move on to page 151. Te Papa indicative business case and next steps. And I am stepping aside from this discussion and ask Councillor Thurston to chair this report, please.
Lyle, unmute.
Sorry. Colleagues, we're on page 151. It's item 7.7, Te Papa indicative business case, the next steps. It's going to be presented by Ruth Feist and Carl Luca from TCC. And I was told that Alistair would be in the wings, but I think Alistair has dropped off. So Ruth, the floor is yours, and Carl, go for it.
So thanks to Carl for attending today, because he's the project manager from TCC and he will be able to answer any of the questions. I'm going to take the report as read if that's possible, just to note that obviously there are some key public transport implications from the indicative business case. However, further investigation of the investment timing, costs and cost sharing needs to be progressed with the project partners. That's ourselves, Tauranga City Council, Bay of Plenty Regional Council and Te Waka Kotahi, NZTA, and that's a next step. So more detailed costs will be presented to the Public Transport Committee once they are known. I know that Carl has some updates in terms of the next steps, and that's section 4 of the report on page 154 of your agenda. So I might just hand those over to Carl if that's okay to go through that amended timeline.
Go for it, Carl.
Okay, thank you. Kia ora koutou. I'm Carl Luca. So I'm the program manager for this project. Just jumping to the next steps, we had anticipated taking the indicative business case to the NZTA board on the 18th of June. Subsequently, we are just, I guess, filling a few more gaps in information requirements following recent engagement with NZTA and also the need to undertake a peer review. So I think importantly, we don't see any changes to the program or to the content of the IBC. Rather, it's just a bit of backfilling and making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So the revised date is to take it on to the 20th August to the NZTA board for endorsement.
Okay. Is Worship Mayor Webber followed by Councillor Thompson? Is Worship?
Well, so I was going to, mine's not a question. It's the same comment I made earlier on. I'm quite happy to move recommendation 1, that we received the report for this committee to endorse the regional council. When you don't know the final costs or the timing and who's actually got to stand up and pay the bill, I think it's a bit of a moot point. So we can only receive the report and wait for further developments before we recommend anything. So I'm quite happy to move recommendation 1.
Okay, I'll just park that for one moment. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I support Mayor Webber on that. The Urban Form and Transport Initiative has some way to go before it's actually being finalised. But look, I've got a process question. Councillor Nees asked earlier in the meeting if there might be a diagram produced which actually shows the integration of all of the plans, and I fully support that. But what I'm after is a matrix which actually sets out the decision-making framework for UFTI, TSP, Te Papa, etc. Because all of the aforementioned are going through IBC, indicative business case processes at the moment, but that's far from the end of the matter. So my question is to staff, is it possible, please, could we have a decision-making framework which demonstrates just exactly where these plans need to go to in terms of actual decision-making under the Local Government Act, not just the IBC process, but all of the other processes? Thank you.
Namuta.
Through the chair, yes.
And you'll get that diagram out?
Yes, we'll work on both the diagram as well as the decision-making framework matrix requested.
Okay, I don't seem to have any further speakers. Are there any further speakers? Yeah, Councillor Deputy Mayor Balder.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
You need to turn your volume up, Deputy Mayor.
In regards to the comments by Mayor Webber earlier about only passing item 1, I can't see the difficulty with endorsing the strategic approach. This is the Te Papa indicative business case in regards to the intensification of the Te Papa Peninsula. So if Mayor Webber has a problem with supporting it, I would rather move all 3 and take the votes individually, because it just simply, and number 2 notes that the investment timing costs and things are subject to further investigations. We're in a process, and the IBC is a part of that process, and we want to proceed it. It would be helpful to have at least the endorsement and support of our partners for this process.
I do note the word subject to are in both 1 and 2. Does that carry favour with you, Your Worship?
Well, I just note, maybe cynically, that we did support it in 2004 and 2013. So, you know, this is AFTI's just the latest version of what we've approved in the past. And we're waiting for the things is when we're going to fund it, and when, you know, how we're going to fund it.
Yep.
But you know, I think I made my point, and I'll withdraw my offer to move.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Thompson, you were in support of His Worship. Did you want to make any further comments?
No, I'm persuaded by Councillor Baldock. Thank you.
Okay, I don't seem to have any further. Oh yes, we have. Carl Luca, you'd like to speak. Carl Luca.
Thank you. No, look, really, actually, it was just to probably reiterate Councillor Baldock's comments, but he beat me to it, really. So I think, you know, the second point there, the noting the investment timing costs and cost sharing subject to further investigations is really important. I guess just to reiterate the importance of, I guess, taking this through step by step and gaining NZTA endorsement so that we can get around the table and have those discussions around funding. It's an important critical step on the pathway.
Thanks, Carl. Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, mine's been answered. Thank you.
Okay. No further speakers. Deputy Mayor Baldock, you happy to move 1, 2?
Well, I am, but it's I sort of would rather the moving
Someone else
came
did.
from another one, really.
Okay, I'm happy to move. Your Worship, are you happy to second? Mayor Webber?
I'm silent.
You don't wish to second it. Okay, have I got to second it? Councillor Rose, are there any further speakers for or against? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Tona, can it be noted that the chairman declared a conflict of interest and took no part in the discussion? Item 7.1. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. We move on to page 199, the last item in the open section of this, improving the network. Where are we? And I ask Ruth Feast to present this report, please.
Thank you. Most of these items are a quick update, which I'll give, but there's a decision for the committee to make around the existing Route 40 bus service, and that relates to Ballantoy Park Drive. So I'll just go through the report in sequence as it is in the agenda and just highlight the matters that are there. For the Bay of Plenty mode shift plan, Natalie from Wakakotahi, NZTA is available at the meeting for questions if there's any questions about that item. In terms of the future public transport reviews, I think the Western Bay is fairly sort of self-explanatory, and just I wanted to note for the Rotorua public transport review that actually that planning is underway now. So addressing Mr. Thomas's question, that yes, that is underway and it is not waiting for 2021. So at the moment, the project planning is underway for that, and we're looking at this as the strategic review and possibly bringing back a strategic direction to the future Public Transport Committee around that. Noting that the regional fare review, because of changes Regional Council made to how it consulted on the annual plan, all the fare review options need to go to the long-term plan consultation round. The next item is the Ballantoy Park Drive trial. The information is all in the report for you to read, and the recommendation is that no changes are made to that particular route at this stage. In terms of the Mamaku Village Connector trial, just noting there that a report of the trial assessment will need to come back to the committee in August for a decision. And the Kainaroa Village bus stop, noting there that that Jessica Easton touched on earlier, is that a kind of an on-demand bus stop will be operated for that village, so that customers can ring the bus company and book in that they need to be picked up, and that will make that route allow for the route to sort of deviate when it's needed. And that's probably the end of my quick roundup, noting that you will need to come back for the decision on the Ballantoy Park Drive recommendation.
Thank you very much for that update. And I've got 3 speakers so far. I've got Councillor Needs, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Isles. In that order, please. Councillor Needs.
Thank you. My question is about the mode shift plan. As a committee and as a group of elected officials, the Regional Council has had very little visibility of the content of this plan. And potentially it is going to be quite significant for our PT delivery, our network. And I just wonder if we could get some more information about that now and ask when we're going to see the plan and is there going to be any public consultation on it? Thank you.
This is a good opportunity for us to see in person Ms. Van Rosen. Natalie, welcome to our committee. I was going to give you some time at the end of the public section just to introduce yourself formally, but this might be your opportunity to speak. So if you could give us any help on this matter, because it's in there, that develop part of the report updates on development of the Bay of Plenty mode shift by NZTA. So Natalie.
Yeah, no problem. So the mode shift plan in the write-up there, it says that it will be available by May. Because it's posted, we've had to push that out, unfortunately, a little bit. So that should be available in June. Official at the moment are working through a draft. We do have a early version of that, which I think we would be in a position to share in a few weeks or so.
Your sound is not, it's very broken up, Natalie.
Unfortunately, NZTA systems don't.
That's better.
Better? Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know how much you've heard of that, but we'll have the mode shift stuff probably through to you in a more formalised version by June. But we could probably provide a better summary maybe for the next meeting. Namuta?
Yes, absolutely. Through the chair, a number of staff have been working across agencies to assist Waka Kotahi in the development of this plan, and so we will look to provide increased visibility, definitely through the next meeting, but I'm sure we can also provide an interim update as well in the meantime, a more detailed update, written update. Yeah.
Will there be consultation on the plan, please?
Did you get that question, Natalie? just asking whether there'll be consultation and asking for consultation on the plan.
So in terms of public consultation or up to committees such as this?
Councillor Nees?
Both, I would have thought. It's fairly significant.
Pardon me, sorry, I'm having such problems with my computer. So I believe at this point it will just be going through up to councillors rather than going to public consultation, and then that can be up to each of the partners as to how they would like to deal with it from there.
Thank you. Councillor Nees, have you finished with your questions? Presumably she has. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of the further report that's going to come through to us on this, I would like to see some explanations as follows. How, as I mentioned right at the outset of the meeting, how does this integrate with the UFTI mode shift scenario report? Picking up on Councillor Hughes's question, how does this fit with the overarching decarbonisation targets? Further, what is the market that is being targeted for mode shift? And how does that have regard to things like changes in working from home, electric vehicles, etc.? So I wonder if those matters would be able to be covered off in the subsequent report that's going to come through to us. Thank you.
Would you, Natalie, would you like to respond to that, or just take
Yeah,
on?
absolutely. So the as Mota has mentioned, the wider mode shift report really builds on a lot of the work that UFTI's already done. This mode shift work that we've done so far, though, has been really focused on the Western Bay, and then there'll be an Eastern Bay component that we'll be looking to undertake from June. So I think in the diagram that we can put together for your earlier question, we can kind of show how it will all fit. But we can definitely come back to you when we next meet on how that fits with the decarbonisation targets and the markets and the people we're looking to target for the outcomes of this plan.
Thank you. Does that meet your needs, Councillor Thompson? Thank you. Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wish to speak to item 2.3, the Eastern Bay Public Transport Review. As the committee will be aware, this is the first training that the Whakatane District Council has been involved with the Public Transport Committee. We're in the early stages of progressing our Access Whakatane policy, and we are keen to see the opportunities for public transport to play an important role in accessibility across our district, especially for our remote and economically disadvantaged communities. We're aware of the Kawerau trial, and we're also keen to review the existing bus service with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to see if it can be optimised further and gain further patronage for our district. So thank you for the inclusion there, and we will certainly be doing a lot more work on that into the last quarter of this year.
Thank you, Councillor Isles. I don't think it needs responding by staff. Your points are noted. Any further questions on this item? Yes, one more. Councillor Hughes.
I had one too, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if you don't put your hand up.
I did several times.
Councillor Hughes. No, I meant you use the machine. It's the only way I can't see everyone. Councillor Hughes and then Councillor Border.
Yeah, just looking at how we are assessing the four well-beings around this initiative. How are we looking at cultural, social, environmental well-beings clearly through this initiative? And how are we reporting on those
Are you talking about this
outcomes?
the mode shift plan by NZTA, or are you
I
talking,
am. Yep.
You am. So Natalie, can you respond to that for us?
Yeah, so as this is an NZTA document, we'll be looking to respond to things such as the Transport Outcomes Framework, which includes a lot of those livability and wellbeing approaches applied by Treasury. So they will be looking to, look upwards to that strategic direction.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just about the Ballantoy Park Drive trial, assume that's still in context here, and is the recommendation to continue it. Appreciate the consultation that went on and the responses from the community. I just wanted to ask the question, when there was really good support for the continuation of the trial, yet fairly strong support or comments about reducing the number of buses, why are we not entertaining a reduction in the number? Because it was, fairly evenly matched. Can we get an explanation of that before we put the motion?
Staff?
I'd ask if Jessica Easton could cover off that.
Yep, I can jump in there, Ruth. Yep, we have considered that option. It is quite difficult to implement those sorts of changes in the network with the operators. And so at this point in time, we're going to continue with the current timetabling, particularly as we're going through a lot of other timetable changes at the moment. And we did note that it was the more significant preference to keep it as is as well.
All right, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Mayor Webber.
I was just going to move recommendations 1 and 2.
Thank you. So noted. Just my comment on the Ballantoy Park trial. I was out consulting with the committee on that one, and there was strong support for continuing, maybe some variations, but I know that with the RITS program coming in, where we will have better data, I think that can come, that's the time to look at it, when we're actually basing it on absolute data, good data. So I concur with the staff, and I'm happy to second this report. Any further discussion on it? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. It's a recommendation rather than a motion. Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That is the end of the open session of this meeting. We've got one matter for in the public excluded, and so thank you to those who have been watching this, and thank you for your patience, everybody, for getting through what was quite a big meaty agenda, but a lot of it, of course, was information for us rather than decision making. So thank you for your patience, and we'll just briefly wait a couple of minutes to ensure that the Zoom is off before I move a motion that we go into public excluded for once.